This is part 5 of the Serialized Content Framework created by Caspian Studios. In this part, we're going to be talking about how to create serialized content and how you can use a B2B video podcast series to drive pipeline. So the first thing that you want to do when you're creating a B2B video podcast series is look at aligned incentives. So there's 3 groups that are really important here. There's you as the customer, your guests that are coming on the show, and your audience that is going to be consuming it. Your job is to provide valuable insights, knowledge, or entertainment to your audience while establishing your brand as an industry authority. Your guests should be motivated to share their expertise, promote their businesses, and reach a wider audience. This is pretty core to a thought leadership playbook. And your audience wants to benefit from the information and engaging content that you're providing. They want to pattern match what they're doing at their companies with what your guests are doing and the information that you're going to be sharing. Next, you want to look at format and structure for the show. First off, every B2B series should be created what I call multi-channel, multi-format. Now, multi-format means that you want it to be audio, video, and blog content. That those 3 mediums are the prevailing mediums that you need to be creating in. And if you're creating a B2B video podcast, then you're automatically going to be doing that. Next, you want to figure out, is this a series? Is it episodic? Does it build upon itself, or do these episodes stand alone? Now, in almost all cases, you're going to want certain through lines or topics to go throughout the entire series, but you also want people to be able to come in and engage with a single episode and get the vast majority of the information right then and there. And you want this to focus on either specific topics, industry trends, or, guest best practices or things like that. You can also create a series that is more entertainment or a fiction series that gets at certain thematic elements as well. Next, you want to look at the length of the show. Each episode is probably going to be a little bit different in length, but should be roughly around the same amount of time. And you want to really think about the length based off of what you want to give to the audience. If you want a show that is much more easy listening, quick hitting type content, maybe that's a 10 to 20 minute show. If you want something that is going extremely in depth with a lot of detail with a very senior leader about certain things, maybe it can be the more 55-minute range. If you want something that's super fast, quick hitting, that just gets a little bit of information out there, you could look at maybe 5-minute episodes, or much shorter if you want to go for a TikTok style video. The length is really important to the utility of what you want this thing to be. And I highly encourage you to look at length and play with a bunch of different ways there. The final piece of format and structure that is really important is segments. Most podcasts or video series that are not performing well are things that have very few segments, that is just a meandering, wandering conversation. And I know what everyone is thinking is like, well, Joe Rogan is very popular and things like that. But Joe Rogan has built an audience of millions of people over a long time, and that is what they come to expect from that type of show. You absolutely can create that type of show, but for most B2B organizations, you want to have segments that signpost the listener for what they're going to get and expect each and every episode. Otherwise, it just feels like you're listening to 2 people talk, go on a random road, and you don't know what to expect. So if you're to go tell a friend of like, hey, I just listened to this podcast, and what did they talk about? You're like, I don't know, it's a bunch of interesting stuff. So you really want to be specific with your segments so that you can really signpost the listener so that they can know exactly what they're going to get every single episode. And those are the things that are memorable, and those are the things that are remarkable and people actually tell their friends about. The next part that you want to look at for creating a B2B video podcast series is focusing on experience. You want to focus on the production quality and creating a very high quality product that when someone listens to, that they feel like they are going to be taken care of and transported into a really interesting, innovative, experiential type viewing and listening experience. And that may sound a little crazy, but it is true that we have seen, the data shows that the better the production quality, the better chance you have to stand out. There is no traffic on the extra mile. And if you put the extra effort into the audio and video production, those shows stand out. And if you look at the shows that are at the top of the charts, a lot of those shows have very in-depth production. You might not see it behind the scenes, but it is happening. Part of the experience that is really important is your website experience, because you're going to have the show on Apple, you're going to have it on Spotify, you're going to have it on YouTube, in the places in the apps where people consume this type of content. But you also want people to be able to come to the site and get something out of that as well. And usually what this means is that they're going to have a list of episodes on the website that people can click into and maybe subscribe to a newsletter and get episodes directly to their inbox. Now, the vast majority of people are going to engage with content that is in the app. They're not going to go to your website, but you want this to live on your website and make it really easy for people to find and understand what this show is, why it's for them, and where they can find it. The final piece on experience that you need to think about is the guest interaction. So this person is trusting you with their story. They are trying to share, lessons and information that they have garnered over potentially a lifetime of working in their job. And you need to take that very seriously. You need to make sure that the way they are prepped, the way that their PR team is prepped, the way that their executive team is prepped, that everyone has a really good feeling about the show and the types of things that they're going to say on there. You also need to make sure that the host is well prepped so that they can answer the questions the right way and get the most informational out of them, or the most information out of them in a way that feels really natural. And a lot of guests have amazing stories that are one or two levels below the surface that you kind of have to dig in and get. And they want to share those, but they don't necessarily know how to get them out in a lot of times. And if you do that really well, and then if you promote that episode, share it with them, get their approval, and put that far and wide, you're going to have a really positive guest experience. And I highly encourage everyone to spend more time thinking about the guest experience and how they're going to come on and promote and share your show in a way that feels really good and organic to them without being burdensome. The next piece of creating a B2B podcast that drives pipeline is that you need to have distribution. You need to host your podcast on platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, all of the places where people listen to podcasts, all those apps. You also want to publish this on YouTube and other places where they can watch video, and of course, your website. But that is just where people are able to get it. The next piece of this is how you're sharing it. You obviously want to share this on social media. You want to share clips from the actual episode. You want to share behind the scenes content if you have it, or maybe any type of funny things that happen in the episode. And of course, like promote this on your channels, in your newsletter, and all of that. But usually that type of organic growth is still going to be a fraction of what you can do with paid. Paid is a key part of this, and we'll get into that here in our next segment. Marketing your show is the most important thing that you can do. You need to rely on multiple different channels, including paid, so that you're promoting this to as many places as possible. At the end of the day, you have so many competing priorities on your marketing team. You have tons of customer videos, you have industry reports, you have other things you're coming out with, you have your event series, you have all of these things that you're working on. And at the end of the day, those all have competing priorities to fit into that company newsletter, or to send out to your audience, or to put into your email signature blocks. So you need to focus on building serialized content outside of your core brand, outside of organic. You need to use paid. And what we have seen is that paid is much cheaper when you're promoting to really good content, rather than just trying to push your own product and services just on paid. A great way to do this is that you can promote your series based off of the persona that you're going after, and then follow up with remarketing based off of your product and services. It's a much cheaper way in to promote the content, and then the remarketing layer you can do, after that. You also want to leverage your guest network by encouraging them to share episodes and to give them those assets. Now, every single guest wants to share in a totally different way, and sometimes they feel more comfortable sharing the video, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they want to share it with, just a private Slack messages or people like that. However they feel comfortable is totally fine. And you can share those videos and those clips on your social channels as a company, and then you can invite other people in your company to like, comment, and share. The final piece of building a B2B podcast and using it to drive pipeline is that you need attribution. You need to look at how are you building this audience? How does it impact pipeline? How does it impact those brand KPIs that you're looking at? And we'll dig more into KPIs later on in these videos. But it's a key part to understanding how this is going to drive business results. You can use, from an analytics perspective, the podcast analytics to look and track the listener and viewer demo, to look at engagement, to look at episode performance, and to most of all, look at what are the accounts listening, and using tools that allow you to see what accounts, meaning your customer and prospect accounts, are actually listening to the show. That is critical. And if you can do that, you can show things like pipeline acceleration, all of that. The other thing that you can do is to use the actual guests that are coming on your show to properly see where they are as prospects or customers in pipeline, to see the total quote unquote pipe in the room. And we'll get into that here later on in these videos. But you want to look at those pipe in the room metrics to say, how many people are we putting on the show? What would the pipe in the room be? Are we accelerating that? Are we moving people through the funnel and making meaningful engagements in that way? The final thing that you can do with attribution is simply just ask your audience, ask your guests for feedback. It's a great way if you can ask them what they think of the show, what they would work on, or what you could work on, what you could put in the show. It can really drive a lot of interesting comments and engagement that way, especially if you have a user community or a customer advisory board or things that you could put the show to those people and ask for feedback.